You've counted every calorie, tried every diet, spent hours in the gym, and still something's missing. You want more than just weight loss. You want your energy back. You want your confidence restored. You want a way of living that doesn't feel like punishment. Welcome to Master Your Metabolism, where we cut through the noise, ditch the fads, and give you a real plan to become the healthiest, strongest version of you. Hosted by our team of expert coaches with proven strategies, science-based tips, and real-life encouragement, not just to help you lose fat, but actually create that lifestyle that you love. You've tried everything. Now, let's try what actually works. This is your turning point. Let's go. Hey there. Welcome to Master Your Metabolism. I am here with Coach Whitney, and we are talking today about prenatal and postnatal training and what is the right thing to do. So I figured we would just make an episode here and be able to answer all the questions. So how we're going to kind of run this, Whit, is that I am going to give you a list of some questions that are asked. And then what I need you to do is just give some information that you think might be helpful to people that are listening.
Perfect.
All right. So first question was, I hear this all the time, is can I start exercising while pregnant if I wasn't working out before?
Yes. So this is a great one because I think there's a huge misconception that a lot of women have that, like, if I didn't work out before, I can't start working out, or I can only work out at the level that I was at before I got pregnant. And so while you're obviously going to want to start off, less advanced if you're not used to training, you can absolutely start exercising. You can absolutely start a training program when you do get pregnant, and you can progress throughout your pregnancy, so that's kind of a cool thing that, I mean, even I didn't know with my first pregnancy, like, how do I go about doing this? Can I still, lift heavy weights, all of that. So, and especially if you have been training beforehand, you can continue training at just about the same intensity that you were training before. You don't want to go till failure, obviously. So you'll pull back a little bit, but you can still lift the heavy weights. You can still keep up with most of the barbell exercises. You can keep doing and gaining strength and progressing in your workouts, regardless of what your level was beforehand.
And I'm sure like everything else, right? If you have something, like, you always check with your doctor ahead of time to make sure it's clear, make sure it's safe. And you always want to listen to your body. Like, I know when I was doing it, like, if there were days that my body was not going to have it, I
Yeah.
kind of pulled back on those days. So really just being aware and in tune with kind of how you're feeling for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big thing too, is like, make sure that you have the clearance from your doctor, because there are, of course, going to be cases where exercise or certain exercises or certain types of exercises are contraindicated because there are some women who have different complications. So it's all very individual. But if you have a healthy pregnancy, if you're cleared by your doctor, you're good to go with exercise. And, like you said, listen to your body. That's a big one too.
Yeah, and I know that there's certain modifications, right, for certain exercises. So can you give some examples of certain things, obviously, that we can't do while we're
Yeah, of course.
fully pregnant?
So the good news is, in your first trimester, there really aren't many modifications that you need to be doing. So it's kind of business as usual. I know a lot of women feel more comfortable avoiding exercises in the prone position because, belly, and just to play it safe. You want to be careful with certain exercises like barbell hip thrusts, where, you don't want the weight to roll on your tummy, but you can swap those out for dumbbells, body weight, and then as your pregnancy starts to progress, you're going to want to be careful with any barbell exercises that get too close to your belly. Um, and they're going to feel uncomfortable anyways. So the nice thing there is your body will kind of lead the way. And then that's where you kind of swap a lot of those out for dumbbell exercises. As far as I know, the previous guidelines with ACOG were that, you didn't want to do anything in the supine position after about your second trimester, but new guidelines have come out and it is, for most women, pretty safe in short durations, like under 90 seconds, to be in that position. So as long as you're coming up out of it, it only takes 1 minute to reset. And the reason for that is because of the blood flow that goes in your body, the vena cava. And so the pressure of your uterus, it starts to put pressure on that. But another thing too that's recently come out as far as that goes, they used to think that it could affect oxygen to the baby, but it's actually more mom will have kind of some effects like some dizziness. So if you're experiencing that, just
There's your cue.
yeah, take that position out. And the
Yeah.
nice thing with those two, you can move any of those like lying positions to wall support.
Right.
Just a little bit like of a wedge can make a huge difference. Even taking some of those and just instead of lying flat on the ground, getting into kind of a glute bridge position on a bench where you're at that top position and you're just not having that pressure, that helps a lot. So another good modification there is like a Swiss ball, using that instead. So those are a couple of the modifications. And then again, you're going to want to be careful with like single leg exercises as your center of gravity shifts.
Yes. That was something I noticed
Yeah.
is just doing
Yep.
squats. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
like it really does throw you off balance.
It does. It does. And, the cool thing with your growing belly is that you're kind of just by nature sort of increasing resistance just
Yep.
because your body's getting
Heavier.
heavier and you're having to make these modifications. But, that kind of goes back to pay really close attention to what your body is telling you. I really liked to work on balance while I was pregnant because it helped me in other ways. But if you're going to do stuff like that, make sure that you have some support nearby, a wall, a machine, something that is going to be there in case you need it.
Your
Make
husband.
sure, yeah, your husband,
Your
they
partner.
make great
Something.
supports. Exactly. But pregnancy is not the time to really test your balance doing those Bosu ball balance kind of
Honestly.
scenarios. Don't do
Honestly.
that.
I don't even do them now. So,
Yeah, right. they're they're not fun.
all right. And the next one was, do I have to keep my heart rate at or below a certain point while I'm exercising?
So this is another one that the most recent guidelines in, I believe it was 2015, were updated because previously, yes, I believe it was 145 was the highest they wanted your heart rate to go. And they've really found that that's less of an indicator as using your rate of perceived exertion because, and this, a lot goes in, it's very individualized what your heart rate's going to be while you're exercising. And so what you want while you're exercising is for your RPE, your perceived exertion, not to go above about that 7-8 point, especially when it comes to cardio. But, as long as you're leaving with lifting like a couple reps in the tank, you're not hiring yourself out, exhausting yourself, you're feeling more energized after a workout than exhausted. Those are indicators on whether or not you're actually working out too hard or not. And one of the thoughts behind why they wanted to be cautious about heart rate is that when you're exercising and your heart rate increases, the blood flow goes away from your core area of your body to kind of help you move your limbs. But cool thing about women who train versus women who don't train during their pregnancy is that even though for a short duration, the blood flow is actually kind of away from the baby, over the 24-hour period, baby is getting more blood flow. Those babies tend to have larger placentas, and they tend to be more like healthier, better, like more efficient and all of that. So in the long run, it turns out that you're also conditioning baby.
Nice, nice. All right. And you kind of answered this one already, but can exercising or lifting heavy hurt the baby?
Yeah. So again, yeah, we did kind of go over that a little bit, but I think that's a great one too, because again, back to, I remember with my first pregnancy and my husband was panicking because he's like, you can't lift something that heavy. You can't, do a leg press with plates. You're going to hurt the baby. Look at you. But it's not the case. And actually, most of the modifications that we need to make while we're pregnant to our exercises, it's to protect mom rather than baby, because baby's safe, baby's tucked in there, cushioned away. And that actually kind of brings me back to another modification that I totally forgot to mention, but it's pretty important, is with your core, right? Because that's a big one that, and even a lot of trainers who haven't specialized in pre and postnatal, they don't know what to do with the core. And it's hard to know what to do with your core, but you can train your core, and you actually should train your core through pregnancy. And what you're going to want to do is you're not going to do like your typical crunches. You're going to want to do more of that deep core work, and you're going to want to watch for things like coning and doming down the middle, because your abs are going to separate by the end of pregnancy, because just the logistics of making room for baby. And so whatever you're doing, you're going to want to make sure that you're basically not poking through your rectus abdomini while you're doing your exercises, because that can actually push that gap further apart, and it can make healing postpartum difficult. And then another modification, since we're talking about core, is not to focus too much on oblique exercises. And that's for the same reason, because then if you're pulling this way,
Sides.
then you're kind of pulling that separation a little bit more. But
Interesting.
those are two very big ones that I did not want to forget.
Yeah. And can I return to normal training at 6 weeks postpartum if my doctor clears me? And also the same question with a C-section.
Yes. And so this one is a tough one, because not a lot of people are going to tell you otherwise. And healthcare providers, just because they're not trained in this area, they're going to say, yeah, you're cleared for everything, normal activities. And I know, because I asked, and she's like, yeah, you can do everything. I can run. Yep. I can go back to lifting exactly where I was at. Yeah, you can do it all. But you're probably not going to want to do that. And every woman has a different experience. Every pregnancy is going to be a different experience. But what you're really going to want to do first and foremost is focus on rebuilding strength in your core and your pelvic floor. Because whether you had a C-section or a vaginal delivery, think of it as like a trampoline, right? Your pelvic floor is a trampoline. And throughout the 9 months, you've had your
Somebody
uterus.
jumping on your trampoline.
Yeah, yeah, jumping, bouncing. And, I think all my moms out there can say, like, yeah, somebody was, I don't know many moms who are
Making a
like,
mess in
my
there.
my baby was fine. Everything felt fine
Just
down.
chilling.
Yeah, from like headbutts to
Yeah.
kicks to somersaults. And that is putting a lot of pressure. Not to mention that, but like your trampoline is stretching because of it. So those muscles are weakened throughout your pregnancy, and you need to work on strengthening them once you have the baby. And another, with C-sections, they're not treated as major abdominal surgeries, but that's exactly what they are.
100%.
You know,
100%.
it's insane, but say, you tear an ACL, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
out for months, and you're very slow back into, you have to go through a recovery phase. And with the C-section, they cut into your abdomen to get the baby out. And then at 6 weeks, it's like, go back to
Go ahead.
life.
Meanwhile, if you sneeze, you're like brought to your knees and
Exactly.
you can't turn over and you cough and you can feel it.
Right, right. And you think about that too, is like you have to go through all those same stages of healing, all the inflammation. You have to let the tissue internally and externally heal. And we're not giving guidelines on that. And so what I say with moms who've had a C-section, listen to your body, start off very gently, and start off with low impact movement, and work your way up towards if you want to do higher impact. But give yourself a little bit of grace. That 3 to 6 months before you're even close to the level that you were at before is fair. And it gives your body some grace with healing the way that it needs to heal, so that you're set up further down the road to avoid injury, and that everything does what it needs to do for your body to heal.
And I know I know how people feel. Like, I remember being after my second C-section, which was a hot mess. My first one was, like, not great, but my
Yeah.
second one was even worse. It's like all you wanna do is just start working out so you can start feeling like yourself again, but really looking at it's kind of like, having the baby and expecting he came out, okay, let's start running. Like,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
has to be, like,
You have
those
to give
steps ahead,
yourself
even though you really wanna do the things, but spending the time doing those basics, like you said, and the foundations and really start understanding we're not PRing at that time. Like, we're not building a whole bunch of muscle at that time, and everybody wants to do all the cardio to just burn the fat. But, like, at this point, if you allow your body the rest and recovery, that's where I finally, like, got extra sleep. And I was like,
Yeah.
not, trying not to stress out so much. Like, those are the things that can really help in healing. And then just doing slow movements as my body was able to, for sure. But
Yeah.
it took a minute.
Yeah, and it takes time, and it's not to say that you can't do anything, like, you can go on walks. You can do core and pelvic floor work. It is not the sexiest work. It's
Yep.
not the hot, like hop on your latest hit class. And
Yep.
a lot of people find it boring, but it's recovery. It's rehab. You're rehabbing your body. You can do yoga. You can do a lot of things, and you can even start to lift and do work with bands and, just again, listen to your body, and you'll give yourself the time to get there when you get there. Because you brought up sleep, like, good Lord, you need that. And it's hard to come by when you're in those early postpartum months.
I'm just catching up now, and
Yeah,
he's 19. So that's where we are.
couple years. I mean, you see
It's
my
not happening.
check-ins
Yeah.
probably like, I don't
No,
get it.
sleep.
Youngest
So
is almost 2.
absolutely, absolutely. But I do. And I think the more we were talking to some clients that you're working with and you're doing that public floor program is that people don't understand. Like, if you don't go through and heal that, some of the symptoms, I've heard some of the symptoms that these girls like, they're peeing when they're running, they're peeing when they're sneezing, they're having pain during, when they're trying to be intimate with their spouse. Like, there are a
Yeah.
lot of symptoms that happen as a result of pelvic floor dysfunction. So, could you share a few? I mean, I just knew those couple because I hear people that say it, that some of the clients, but some of the things that people might experience that if they do have pelvic floor dysfunction, so they know that they may need a program like the one you developed so they can start to heal.
Yeah, of course. So you touched on some of the, I think, more obvious ones that we know. I can give you a great example, and I've shared this before with my first when I was cleared because I didn't know any of this at the
Hmm.
time, and I was so psyched. I loved to run. I was going to go out for a run. I made it about 5 steps, and I didn't even think I had to pee. But I knew that, like, I mean, it just nothing was staying in. And so I had to turn around and go back. And that's kind of where this whole journey of everything started, that I was like, this is not right. So that's one that a lot of women experience. A lot of women will experience that while lifting. Because again, you have to be able to manage that, for one, intra abdominal pressure. But when you're lifting and you're putting pressure downwards, if your pelvic floor is too weak, it's not going to hold in what it's supposed to. And then another symptom that's like a little less, I think, attributed to, but it's very directly related to, is low back pain. So a
Hmm.
lot of new moms will start to have that low back pain. And a lot it's caused by a lot of things, but really strengthening your core, really strengthening your pelvic floor, because they are connected and they are related and they work together with your diaphragm. That will do a lot to help support your low back and get rid of that pain. And it'll also work to help improve posture. So all of it kind of works together, but it's at its root a core and pelvic floor problem, especially when you start to notice it in those early postpartum days. Another symptom that is kind of that secondary, like a little less easy to pinpoint, if you're noticing like your glutes are not firing,
Hmm.
or you're having like the mom butt, your butt went flat, that could very well be pelvic floor and core dysfunction. Because if your pelvic floor is not firing properly, your
It
glutes are
won't
not
engage
firing
those
properly.
muscles.
Yep.
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 And probably due to posture as well.
Yes. Yeah. Which again, all kind of connected and they're all affected by carrying baby. Another one that you touched on is that like painful intercourse because again, your pelvic floor is not really holding together like it's supposed to and a lot of women will have pain. And confession, I asked my OB about it when I like at one of my early appointments and she just kind of brushed it off like I guess it could
It'll
happen.
get better.
Yeah, and I'm like, "What do you
Deal
mean
with
this?"
it. Deal with it.
I thought and I had a relatively easy birth. Like there was very minimal tearing, so I was very confused. I'm like, "I don't understand why my body just didn't go back like it was supposed to
Yep.
magically
Yep.
be where it was."
Yep.
Another issue that a lot of moms have is like that mom pooch. Again, direct result. A lot of people think like, "Oh, it's just baby fat," but a good portion of it's not. And that's more, when your core hasn't healed properly and you're getting, and I see this a lot, women especially, but with moms it's more pronounced because of that sucking in belly where the center is too tight and then that causes that pooch to come out at the bottom. So really working on your breath and connecting that with your core and your pelvic floor goes a long way in helping to fix that and get rid of that pooch like appearance. And one thing that I don't think a lot of women take into account, and you may see this a lot with some of your menopause clients, is that if you don't work on it early on, it can
Gets so
really,
much worse.
yep. And then when you're older, especially, and it can happen to younger women too, but organ prolapse can and affects a lot of women, and that can happen to varying degrees. So again, back to being super important to really strengthen those muscles because they are what are holding in your pelvic organs.
Yeah. And I've also heard it could start impacting like your stool and your gas and,
Yes.
how your digestion works as well. And that just causes a whole multitude of issues because that's where it develops that things aren't moving. Well, you're not going to the bathroom. Okay, great. Things are just sitting. That's where bacterial overgrowth will start happening because things aren't moving through your system. Now, all of a sudden, your hormones are, that's how they get excreted. And now you have an, coordination of an imbalance, I would say, of your hormones because now they're not able to leave the body. So it's like one thing can cause a multitude of other issues. So definitely, I think just being aware and just doing things as a precaution, I would imagine that most women, after they have a baby, should really do some type of core work and pelvic floor strengthening types of exercises in order to prevent anything from happening, and even that situation would, in my mind, make sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I obviously I agree completely because it's kind of where I'm at. But it just kind of makes sense, because back to the whole trampoline thing, whether you're currently having problems that you're aware of or not, your pelvic floor has been through trauma. And whether you had a C-section or not, it's still that trauma's there. And so repairing those muscles before it becomes a bigger problem, it just makes a lot of sense. And another plus about really rehabbing your core and your pelvic floor is it's something that you can do literally in the hospital. They're gentle enough movements that you can start doing those right after you give birth. I did not,
I did not either.
but I did when I got home. I remember thinking I should really start doing like some breath work. And then I was like, I'm tired.
Yeah, yeah.
So all that to say, no guilt if you don't. But if you're really itching to get back, that's a really great place to start and get some movement because it is safe to do.
So, on that note, can you share maybe one or two things that somebody that is looking to maybe start some types of movements for pelvic floor or something that they could do in the hospital, giving an example of something that they could do when they first have the baby or even beforehand?
Yes, I can. So, one thing that is going to be super helpful and is really a good foundation for, how I like to, how I started off my all my workouts with the pelvic floor program is with breath work and connection breath. So the idea behind that is connecting your muscle contractions and relaxing with your breath because, like I mentioned before, it's your pelvic floor, your transverse abdominals, and your diaphragm all work together as a unit. And another thing that I think often gets overlooked is that your diaphragm has not been operating at full capacity for 6+ months. So the breath work also plays a big role in helping to calm mom down. So what you're going to want to do is I like to start them off separately and then do them together. So on your inhale, we'll start with like your deep core. On your inhale, you're going to relax everything. And then on your exhale, you're going to want to draw your belly button to your spine and pull kind of upwards too. So like an up and in motion. And when you're pregnant, a good cue for this is like to hug your baby in, and that really helps with that kind of visual. So this also something you can do while you're pregnant. And so taking a couple breaths there to really start to reconnect with your core muscles, and then you can move on to your pelvic floor. So on your inhale, again, you're going to relax everything. And then on your exhale, you can imagine your pelvic floor is like a sheet of paper with 4 corners. You're going to want to try to pull the corners together and up. So where these pelvic floor contractions are different than like your traditional Kegel is it's not just like a squeeze and release. You're really going to want to try to imagine that you're pulling up and in and then putting it together on your inhale. You're going to relax everything. Exhale, you're going to pull everything, belly button to spine, pelvic floor up and in, and then inhale and release. And I do like to emphasize, make sure that you're focusing on the release when it's time to release, because an overactive pelvic floor can cause just as many problems as a weakened pelvic floor. And a lot of women especially have that problem. A lot of times I'll see it in like high stress women who have a hard time relaxing in general.
Yes.
That's where
I feel like
it's
that.
like, I didn't realize how hard it would be to like
Chill out.
relax my muscles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of doing all of that. You can do that for like 10 breaths, 3 sets. Another good exercise that you can do in the hospital is vacuum breaths. And so again, it's mostly focusing on those transverse abdominals. So really sucking in, pulling everything up and in as much as you can, really getting all the air out, and then you release.
Yes.
And what that does, it really gently engages those deep core muscles and helps to pull your rectus abdominis back together.
Nice. Nice. And none of us want that big, wide open, having issues with all the belly issues later because it's a lot.
Yeah, it can be. And I know it can cause a lot of weakness that's really hard to fix later on.
Yep. Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was so much great information, Whit. I appreciate it. And if you guys need more information or had any questions, I'm going to put Whitney's information down below, or you can set up a call with her. I will also set up her call link in the show notes. So thank you again, everybody. If you wouldn't mind, it would mean the world to us if you would drop us a review, let us know how we're doing. And if there are any other episodes or information you would like us to share, please share them in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you later. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in to Master Your Metabolism. If you found value in today's episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd hit subscribe and share this episode with someone who could use a little guidance in their health journey. Ready to take the next step? Head over to www.mastersfitnesscoaching.com and you can book a free call right from the site so we can chat about your goals and how we can help support you. Don't forget to join our Facebook group where we're sharing coaching tips, support, and tricks to help keep you on track and continue making progress. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to walk with you every step of the way. Until next time, stay consistent, stay kind to yourself, and keep mastering your metabolism. Let's do this together.